Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. I hope everyone is feeling slightly okay after the US U23's 4-0 win over Dominican Republic and excited for the matches coming up this week. We have so much US soccer to watch this week. I'm really excited. If you can't tell, I'm like a little giddy just thinking about all the matches we have to watch. I mean, we've got several this week, and then we've got even more coming up next week and into April, and then by May, we'll have just so much more. We finally have soccer back. It feels so invigorating to be able to watch the U.S. in competitive matches, but also matches in friendlies that kind of even mean something. It's just fantastic. And then we have the U.S. women with some strong friendlies coming up next month as well. Before we talk about the just numerous matches we have coming up, I do have to remind you, please subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcast app you're listening right now. That will help not only this show, Soccer for Us, but it will help the Soccer Down Here Daily Show and other shows in the SDH network grow. We appreciate your support and all of you who subscribe and follow us. And also make sure to follow us on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. You can tweet at me your thoughts during the game, after the game, whatever, and I will be happy to share them on these episodes. Thank you to everyone who follows and likes and retweets and responds as they do now. I really appreciate it. I hope that it can be a place where you can have some fun soccer conversation on Twitter. Now, to talk about all these matches, I am bringing on Caleb from USMNT Corner on Twitter to talk about the U.S. men's national team versus Jamaica and Northern Ireland. Those two friendlies coming up at the end of this week on Thursday, March 24th and Sunday, March 28th. Two friendlies that I think we were really excited for when they were announced. Now they have kind of dwindled in meaning, mainly because of just the circumstances surrounding everything right now. I know it feels like we see the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, but unfortunately we are still in a pandemic, and there are a lot of countries and leagues that have rules around that. So, between Jamaica not being able to call in players for confederation issues and COVID, and the U.S. having to kind of play a numbers game with who they can and can't call in with COVID, and then Northern Ireland playing this match sandwiched between two World Cup qualifiers. It's just a weird window, but I think we're all excited to watch these games. So Caleb's going to come on and talk with me about those. And then we'll talk about the U.S. U23's 4-0 win over the Dominican Republic. It looked a little shaky, but at the end of the day, we got the result we needed. And then we'll look ahead at the final group match against Mexico on Wednesday, March 23rd, and a little bit at the semifinals on Sunday, March 28th. So again, a lot of soccer coming up. So without further ado, let's bring on Caleb. I am stoked to bring onto this podcast the purveyor of USMNT Corner on Twitter. It is Caleb Cook. Caleb, thanks for joining me. How are you doing, and how was coaching?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Coaching's been good. I mentioned I coach my son and my daughter, both with wins over the weekend. So well done. Great job.
That means it's a happy household, right?
It is a happy household. Yeah. We're happy. Grandparents were there. They're happy. Everybody's happy all the way around.
Well, that is good. It's been relatively happy for the United States men's national team program, really the U.S. program as a whole, this year. And I think that these upcoming March friendlies, Jamaica and Northern Ireland, were supposed to be really awesome and fun and cool to talk about. And we're not quite sure that the quality of opponent will be as good as we had hoped. Let's just put it that way. You and I were talking a little bit before this, but, trying to predict what Jamaica will be like, how they'll even line up, who will even be able to play is a crapshoot right now. A little bit of background. For starters, this is kind of an ongoing thing with the Jamaican Football Federation, but they have multiple players, high-level players, so Andre Blake, Kamar Lawrence, and others, who are kind of in a contract battle with the Federation right now. So they are not in this roster. On top of that, you have a lot of players in Europe who, similar to the U.S., have some COVID issues. It's just a weird thing in Europe right now of who can travel to where. Right. And then on top of that, you have some players who when they got to Austria, tested positive for COVID. So, they have been in and out of training. And to even make matters worse for Jamaica, they had some visa issues where some players were not able to get to Austria until very late. So they haven't really been able to, train a whole lot together. So, Theodore Whitmore has a lot of obstacles to overcome to just make this meaningless March friendly happen.
Right.
I mean, you're trying to think about what is going on here, but if you're the U.S., obviously you have to think of it as whatever, we're going to have to play what we have to play. But I mean, what can you even take out of this? Just, on looking at it from the start.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. First and foremost, I'm just happy we're playing, right? At the end of the day, there's going to be a game. As fans, we're going to watch it on TV, and it's going to be great. But yeah, as far as quality, you don't know what you're going to get. And, you spend a lot of time watching film and preparing. And how do you even do that? How do you watch film? We
didn't even talk about the fact that most of these guys are Jamaican domestic league players, and that league hasn't even been playing.
Yeah.
How do you watch them? How do you prepare?
The whole thing has been just such a wild ride. I mean, even with the U.S. roster, it's been a roller coaster with guys. Oh, they're not coming. Yeah, they are. They're leaving. Well, now they're not. I mean, it's just been it's been up and down. Thank God no one has motion sickness with rosters dropping. So, but like I said, I'm happy we're playing. All we can do is go out there and play our game, right?
Right.
Whatever they put on the field is what it is, right? So we go out, we play our game, we work on stuff. I mean, I guess you could just kind of treat it like a glorified training match, right?
Right. And I think that's actually a good point because you mentioned players in the U.S. camp who are going to have to leave after this first match. Some big names not even a part of the squad. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, not a part of the squad entirely.
Breaks my heart.
Right. You get really excited to hear that we're going to have a friendly in Europe. You expect our best European players, and then Adams and McKennie can't even show up. Tim Weah can't come. So to your point, it's kind of a training exercise to see.
It really is.
Who fills those holes? Yunus Musa will be there, so there's a hole filled with, he can play the McKinnon role, I think, very well. But, it's an interesting look at how do you prepare for something that is obviously such a struggle for Jamaica. And you don't have even, we mentioned Tyler Adams being out. Christian Caffeys comes in to replace him. We'll get through the full roster in a second, but it's just like you didn't even get a full, really, Tyler Adams replacement or even a defensive midfielder that you normally would have because that guy is in Mexico playing right now.
One of the biggest questions, for sure.
Yeah. Let's run through the U.S. roster so that we can kind of fully evaluate it and talk about which positions and which players we have the most questions about. Sure. So goalkeepers, you have Ethan Horvath from Club Brugge, Chituro Odunzo from Leicester City, and Zach Steffen from Manchester City. I personally would love to see Ethan Horvath get to play during these friendlies, but I think it's going to be Zach Steffen playing both. What do you think Berhalter does with
that? I agree. I mean, you've got him at Man City, right? And he's the second keeper, so he's not exactly racking up the minutes.
Yeah.
He's had some starts here and there. He's done well in those starts. But I think you owe it to him as the current number one keeper to give him these starts. I could see giving him one and then Horvath the other. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think he's going to get both starts.
Yeah, I mean, he just came off, a clean sheet in the FA Cup. So that's pretty decent, I would say. And
it's not like you're running their legs down, right? They're keepers.
Right. A keeper can play multiple games in a row.
Yeah.
I guess my question here, too, is if you're trying to evaluate what the goalkeepers look like for the summer for World Cup qualifying, do you need to, you're going to have a lot of matches coming up.
Sure.
Does it make sense to get Horvath some minutes just so that he's played in the system, either just in case or because, he may have to play some matches just because there's so many?
I don't think you could do a lot wrong by giving him those minutes. Like I said, there's two schools of thoughts. If you reward Zach Steffen being your current number one, give him both of those games. I don't think you're going to hurt anybody's feelings. But that said, Horvath has, he's been in Europe. He's pushing himself. He's working hard. So he comes in. At the end of the day, these are all friendlies. So what is it really going to hurt if you do give him the second game? So I think you go either way. I wouldn't mind seeing him. To be honest with you, I remember what was it versus Italy a few years ago with
it was.
Played extremely well. So I mean, he's deserved minutes for sure. So at the end of the day, that's coach's decision, and I don't think anybody would be upset to see him get that second game.
Yeah, I will say too that if you're evaluating these two opponents on which one is more likely to score, I think it's Jamaica. Northern Ireland during all of 2020 never produced more than one goal a game. Literally, they had, I think, 10 games and 8 games scored exactly one goal and were shut out in the other 2. So not the most prolific on offense. Jamaica has some attacking talent. So, Steffen might get more of a workout might get more work with the defenders having to defend against a very good Jamaican attack. Like, I don't think that's, of all the issues they've had, their attacking talent seems to be in this roster. So that would be the one thing is, Steffen definitely getting a work against Jamaica would be nice.
Yeah, it's always when keepers go out there and they were playing some cupcake team and they're just standing there. I always feel bad for them. I've played keeper several times, and when your team is just dominating possession and there's zero attack, there's some times where it's like, can I get a chair off the sideline, something? You feel bad for them, but I agree with you. I think Steffen definitely gets that first game. And then, if Horvath gets the second versus Northern Ireland, if they get a shot on him, fantastic. If not, hey, well done. Thanks for being here. You're in our plans. He's arguably second keeper. I know Matt Turner has something to say about that. But hey, he's not here right now.
No, he's not. He is MLS preseason with New England. So let's move to defenders. We talked about, that Jamaica will have some problems, I think, for our U.S. defense. But I do expect that this will be the first choice back line because you're going to have John Brooks, Reggie Cannon, Serginho Dest, Aaron Long, Matt Miazga, Eric Palmer Brown, Tim Ream, Brian Reynolds, the right back, Chris Richards, and Anthony Robinson, your left back. Now, not a whole lot of there is a whole lot of center backs, but Brooks and Reggie Cannon will have to depart after the first game. So you kind of assume that they're going to start. Or at least play a significant. I mean, for Cannon, you'd expect that he'd have to at least get 45 minutes. But I'd expect both of those guys to start in that first game.
I agree. I think so. I think you have to. Why bring him in, right? Yeah. Give him the minutes. Give him the start. I like to see him play 90. Truth be told, my dream 11 is probably with Cannon on the right and Dest on the left.
Well, that's my follow-up question is, do you put Dest on then that's the follow-up question. Do you put Dest on the left and Cannon on the right and play it? And we saw him do that against Panama in November. So
yeah, I think it worked. A lot of people, at least not left-footed. I'm not a subscriber to those theories. I'm right-footed. I've played left back many times. But I think with Brooks and Cannon being gone, like you said, you give them the first game, Cannon on the right, Brooks left center back, Dest left back. I think we probably see Chris Richards in the first game. That. I think everybody, I know Twitter at least, I can't speak for Berhalter, but I think most everybody on Twitter – the dream pairing right now is John Brooks and Chris Richards, and I think what an opportunity to see it.
Well, that's the question, right? Like, if you were to ask me to put out the best 11 that Berhalter could right now, I'd have to say it's probably John Brooks and Aaron Long starting, but that's because Aaron Long is a very experienced guy at this level and has played very well for the U.S. men's national team. I think a lot of people like to dump on him because he's an MLS guy, but he has played pretty well for the U.S.
Absolutely.
But Chris Richards is this shiny new toy that everyone wants to see.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, I agree with you. And I'm not one of those, they're MLS, they're trying. I don't think so. I mean, Aaron Long has had how many rumors of him going to England, and then Red Bull are stepping in their way. It's not like he can't go play.
Yeah.
And then when he's playing on the international stage, he's defending against guys that are in Europe. So it's not that he can't do it. Absolutely he can. And he and Brooks have played well together. So I could absolutely see that. I just hope and I wish, because just to see Brooks and Richards play together, and you only have that first game to do it. Yep. So that's kind of where it's like, well, let's maybe give them that shot. But again, it's what happens in training.
Right.
If Long's just balling out, I think you owe it to him. He's the more senior player. And it's the argument is with Richards, it's not like he's some young kid with all this potential and you're just hoping he does. No, I mean, he's starting right at Hoffenheim and he's playing well.
He's playing well. Yeah. He didn't have a great game this past weekend, but he's played well,
exactly
very well.
Yeah.
But I think then for me, I'm with you. I would start Chris Richards this first game just because we're like, you can give him a half, fine, whatever. Yeah. But there's no other reason to bring a guy in if you don't play him significant minutes in a game like this. Then for that second game, I think it gets way more interesting because John Brooks isn't there. So who's your starting left back? Aaron Long has played there. You could put Eric Palmer-Brown there, who I'm very excited to, and I really want to see in this camp.
And you have Ream. You have
Tim Ream,
which a lot of people have written off. He's not starting at Fulham. He's an older guy, but I mean, I guarantee you the guy can still get a job done.
Yeah,
he passes the ball well. He plays well with the ball at his feet, which is what Berhalter wants. He's a senior member. I'm not a Ream hater. I like the guy. He's probably. I mean, he's in there for me at the left center back depth chart. I'd probably go John Brooks, Mark McKenzie.
Yeah.
But Tim Ream can get the job done. So if you have to play him there, you do. But then it opens up all these questions of, well, there's no 6 in the camp right now. Well, no true 6. Do you play 3 at the back? You've seen a lot of Twitter going on and about it. I don't
think so.
I don't think Berhalter's doing that.
I think you mentioned this as a training exercise, and it's fine if you want to do a training exercise of 3 in the back. That's fine. But do you really think that he's going to play 3 in the back at all during a Gold Cup, during any of the World Cup? I don't. Yeah. So why waste a game on a silly 3-back when you need to practice? Because
I'm with you.
I know how Berhalter thinks and the fact that he wants guys to understand his system very well.
Uh-huh.
So, playing the 4-back.
We lost it playing his system. If he really wanted to, we could have beaten Canada playing more of a pragmatic type style. He could have switched things around, but he didn't care about the result because ultimately it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And he wanted to play his system because that's what matters to him. I 100% agree.
So, and that 2019 Canada and the Mexico game before that were perfect examples of him. He was trying to build the system, and the results at the end of the day weren't that important, especially in that Nations League where, okay, you lost to Canada. We all freaked out. But at the end of the day, you knew you were going to beat Cuba twice.
Yep.
And that home match against Canada, you knew you could get the result.
Well, and look where we're at now. Everybody was freaking out at the time. We lost to Canada. We played terrible. Mexico destroyed us because we were playing the system. But he was dead set on ingraining his principles into these players' minds. And now you play Wales, a few months ago, and he had 2 days with the guys before they took the field, and it wasn't terrible because they have an idea. Because he's been so dead set on teaching them that style. And
that's the benefit when you're going to have a World Cup qualification schedule that is 3 matches in a window where you're not going to have a whole lot of training time before a match just because you don't get guys to come in early. Like they have a very limited amount of time. You're going to have to play a lot of guys. I mean, this is a great test. I don't think Tyler Adams can go 90 minutes in all 3 matches of a World Cup qualifying window.
I wish.
And so do I. But he's young, he's fit, but he's not that fit like no one is. So this is, again, a good test of that. But that doesn't mean you change the system for that one game.
Exactly. You got to put some guys in there and see what they can do.
Now, for that second game, we both like Eric Palmer-Brown.
Yeah.
You like Tim Ream. I kind of want to see Eric Palmer-Brown on the left and maybe Miazga on the right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the second game is going to offer so many different options because you don't know which way Berhalter's going to go. We all have our own ideas and what we would like to see, but at the end of the day, he's the manager. He's going to put out what he wants to do. I think I don't know. Have they shown or talked about? It's a friendly, so I'm guessing probably 6 subs, right?
Yeah,
we'll
still be doing that.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see a lot of guys get a lot of playing time. Who gets the start? Yada yada, whatever. But EPB, he's another one of those guys. Like I said, with Horvath, he's been in Europe. He's pushing himself. Yeah. He's working hard, and he's a good player. He really is. He's a great player. So reward him. When was the last time he's been in a U.S. men's national team camp?
Yeah, it's been a very long time.
A long time.
Yeah, and it sucks for him a little bit because had the Olympics happened last year, he probably would have been in that Olympic team at qualifying last year if Austria Vienna would have let him go. But maybe you could have worked something out with them. At least probably playing in the Olympics had we qualified. So I hate that for him because he really did lose a few good chances to get good looks in this system. But now is a great time for him to step up because, I get it. He's playing in the Austrian Bundesliga. It's not the best. Same with Brendan Aronson. But it's still a pretty good league that has some decent teams in it.
Yeah, you can't. You've got guys just touting Brendan Aronson and just blowing him up, and for good reason. I mean, he is playing well, but you can't do that and then say, well, yeah, but EPB is only in the Austrian Bundesliga. Well, it's like – You can't do that. They're both there. They're both playing well. He comes in. I would love to see him get those minutes. I would love it. Absolutely.
And then I guess we're going to put Anthony Robinson on the left for that second game. I think you have to. He really does need work in this system.
I think that's one of the biggest questions to answer is, can Anthony Robinson be a viable left back in a 4-back system? We know he can play wing back. I mean, he's been incredible. We watched him in the Premier League all year long. He can play wing back. And I get into Twitter discussions all the time because I have, like I said earlier, I have Dest as my left back because we play in a 4-back system. And people are always like, no, A-Rob. I say it all the time. If we played with wing backs, 100%.
With true wing backs, yeah.
But we don't. We're in a 4-back system. And thus far, with the U.S. men's national team, he has not shown well.
He really hasn't. And, I mean, I think your point to a wingback is important because when you're playing a true wingback, you do have an idea of someone covering behind you. Even though Berhalter pushes his fullbacks up really, really high, they do have that duty to get back and defend, and he has been caught out a lot of times. Does he fit the system even going forward? I think he kind of does, but because he's a very good attacking player, he's good with the ball at his feet. But
absolutely, he's a
defensive liability.
Yeah, well, and I think, for me, it's the build out, right? When you're building out from the back, which is exactly what Berhalter wants to do. That's where he's struggled. Defensively, everybody wants to point to the Brazil game, and he got blown up. But I mean, who's not going to, right? Come on. Costa is an incredible athlete. And also, I think A-Rob was 18, 19.
I think that was his first real appearance with the U.S.
It was, and I'm sure he was nervous as mess, but people like to point that out. I don't have a problem with that. It's the build out in possession from the back where he has struggled for me. He doesn't look comfortable. He looks frantic. He looks panicky. He just hasn't looked good. So that's why I have yet to put him in my starting lineup as a left back in a back four. So I hope, and he deserves the opportunity, and I hope he gets the opportunity to show that he can do it.
Well, I think he'll have to, because if you don't have Reggie Cannon for the second game, then you have to move Serginho Dest out to the right side. Maybe you could put Ryan Reynolds at the right side. I don't know if Ryan Reynolds is ready for U.S. men's national team minutes yet. I'm sorry, everyone who's on his hype train.
Oh, I'm hyped. I'm hyped about him. I'm hyped. But let's look at his first minutes with Roma.
Yeah,
he looked nervous.
Yeah, which is understandable. But I think it's good to just get him in camp and then be glad that he's here. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, who wouldn't be nervous?
Yeah.
You're right. I don't think he's quite ready. I think it's great that he's in camp. He's getting to know the guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think you're right. I think you put Desk back on the right and A-Rob on the left.
So then moving up the midfield, we'll talk about the Tyler Adams hole, but let's just run through the midfielders. Brendan Aronson, Kellen Acosta comes in from MLS, Christian Cappy, Luca De La Torre, a cool little hipster pick that people have wanted to see. Sebastian Lletget, Yunus Musa, and Owen Otasoe. Now, we'll save this Tyler Adams discussion for a little bit because who plays that 6 is the question. But I want to know, who are your 2 starting 8/advanced midfielders in this first game against Jamaica? Who do you start at?
So, obviously, this is where you wish McKinney was here, because the McKinney and the Musa dual 8s are just so exciting.
I have not had that much fun watching a U.S. men's national team game that I did watching Yunus Musa and Weston McKinney and Tyler Adams all play together in midfield.
It's the dream midfield. It's the MMA, right?
Yeah.
That's the dream midfield. And they're so exciting. They're fast. They're athletic. They're strong. They're big. They're technical. They can play with the ball at their feet. They can scrap. I mean, I'm so pumped for Musa. So, needless to say, obviously Musa is my right-sided 8.
Yeah.
The left side, I think you probably go Lletget.
Okay.
He's Berhalter's boy, right? And I don't say that.
I like Lletget.
I like him, exactly. I don't say that negatively. I like him.
You got to start the most handsome man in U.S. soccer.
He's got Becky G for a reason, right?
Yeah. Right.
Is that her name?
Yeah. No, you got it right.
Middle-aged dad. I think that's her name. I think the way I would describe Sebastian Lletget, people are like, oh, he's MLS for a reason. Here's the thing. He's the type of player that if he's the best player on the field, he might struggle. But if you surround him with really, really good quality players, he elevates his game. And I see that in him because that's kind of how I was. I was never the kind of person that could go out and just take a game over. But if you surround me with good players, my game elevated.
Right.
So I see that with him. So when he played with Wales, he got a lot of hate. But, I mean, he was playing a false 9, which that's not who he is. Yeah. But to that point, he still wasn't terrible.
No, he's been quite good for the U.S. during the Berhalter time and even a little bit before then. 18 caps and 4 goals. He's a pretty experienced guy. He fits this system very well. I think that's the biggest thing is he fits this system well. Mm-hmm. He is not a true 10. He's not necessarily a true 8, but he does all the things that Berhalter wants from that more advanced midfielder position. He presses well. He wins the ball back well. He distributes very well. He works with the wingers well. Is he a 10 in any of those categories? No, but if you're a solid 6.5, 7 across the board, that's pretty good,
He does a job well. I think he's also such a great player to have in your camp because he can cover so many different positions. If you've got him on your bench and you need him to go in and play a tucked-in winger, you need him to play an inverted winger, you need to play him at the 8, you need him to play a false 9. He's done it. You need him to play at a 6. I guarantee you he could probably get the job done. He's extremely versatile, and he's a good clubhouse guy. Why not want that in the roster, right? With that being said, I think he becomes your left-sided 8 because of all those things. His age, he's a more senior member of the team, of this roster, and he's Berhalter's guy. We all know that. Yeah.
Well, and I think also with Musa, he's still a little bit young and inexperienced. He's a great player, but he's still 18 years old. Let's not get that. Let's not forget that. Yeah. He can add a little bit of a knowledgeable presence to the field, a guy who truly does understand the system well, especially when you'll have a guy starting at that 6th position who is a little inexperienced at that. I do have to ask you about the 3 of Brendan Aronson, Kellen Acosta, Luca De La Torre. I think that Aronson is going to play I think he could play 90 minutes between at least the 2 friendlies. Is he, though, ready to break into the this senior national team midfield group?
I think he's putting his name in the hat.
Okay.
Look at what he's doing. That there's that caveat. Well, it's the Austrian Bundesliga, but at the end of the day, if it was so easy, everybody would do it, right? He's gone over there,
right?
A young kid, and is producing, and he's playing extremely well. So I think this camp is a great opportunity for him to be in. This is going to actually lead me. I'm sorry, it's going to lead me into something that a lot of people don't think about. They think about the game and what they see on TV, and that's what it is. People don't realize how important the actual camp is.
Absolutely.
So I think he's in there and he's rubbing shoulders with all these other guys that are extremely talented, playing at huge clubs, and he's showing whether or not he fits in. So I hope he gets some time in both games, or at least gets the full start in the second game. But he's interesting because you could play him as an 8, or you could play him as one of the tucked-in wingers. That's
very true. He's played that position several times for Salzburg and has looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a possibility. He's versatile, and I think he does good things.
He's got some sneaky sauce. I mean, he really does. That goal a few weeks ago was just absolutely beautiful with the little bend. Oh, I love it. Yeah,
I think he'll get 90 minutes between the two friendlies. I don't know if that means he'll start, but I think Berhalter will want to run him out there. Yeah. I don't personally think Kellen Acosta is that great of a player. I think we were high on him when he was younger. He's had some issues both at the national team and MLS, and I look at him and go, there are other players better than you. I don't expect a whole lot out of him, but I think he'll play some this window, but I'd rather see Luca De La Torre play because he's younger and has a little bit more promise than I think Kellen Acosta does. But it's weird because Kellen Acosta is one of the most capped players in this roster.
Yeah.
But it's still just I don't know. He doesn't.
Well,
I don't know. I'm not a fan of those
players. You brought De La Torre, you brought Acosta. De La Torre is interesting because he came out. He had that little clip on Twitter. Well, I don't know where it was originally, but we all saw it on Twitter. He came out and was saying that he thinks he should be involved in the U.S. men's national team camps coming forward. He's playing well. And then what did he do the next weekend? He scored. I mean, he talked the talk. He walked the walk. Absolutely. Here's your reward. Here's your invite to camp. I hope he comes in and plays well. At the end of the day, whether he puts his name in the starting lineup hat or whatever, that's depth. And depth creates competition, which creates better players. The whole thing. We've had such a shallow pool for so long, and guys got comfortable at the top, and they can't do that anymore. You've got guys who are nipping at your heels constantly. Now with Acosta, I think he's one of the guys. You've mentioned Tyler Adams. He's not here, right? So who's going to play the 6? I think you've got Acosta and Odasawi. Those are the only two guys I think that are going to play that. Acosta's played he's played defensive midfielder. He's played right back. He's played 8s. He's played 10s. But I think he's out of everybody on the roster. Him and Odasawi have the most minutes as a 6. So if you're going to try and play the regular 4-3-3 with the upside down triangle with the 6 at the bottom, that's what we normally see. Those are the two guys for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kellen Acosta is the obvious Adams replacement in this squad, right? Like you mentioned, lots of experience playing defensive midfielder and really all around the midfield. Lots of experience at the national team level. Mm-hmm. It does make, and he has played in this system a couple times, so he does understand it, and he should be fully adept to play that 6th position. And maybe he'll impress me because we do need a more Tyler Adams-esque 6 behind him because we don't really have that. Mm-hmm. I don't think we can have Jackson Ewell type playmaker at the 6th position, a regista, if you will, because we've seen what that can do, and we've seen the Michael Bradley and Will Trapp experiment fail. I think Ewell's obviously shown better than those two, but I do think that having a guy who can truly be the backup to Adams in that specific type of role is important. And And I do think that if you look at Odasowie, he's been in and out of the Wolves, squads. He's not really a consistent feature for them, I don't think. So it might be a little too much to expect out of him, but you do get 2 matches.
It'd be a lot to ask, for sure.
Yeah, you get 2 matches, so hey, you can try them.
Yeah, and hey, at the end of the day, like we said, what's Jamaica going to put out there? We don't know. So why not try and see? I think Acosta would be more of the Yule type, 6, more ball playing, and the Odasowie is more of the Tyler Adams. I was glancing at the roster. It's kind of an afterthought, but I don't want him to be. But Christian Kappas, right?
I kind of want to see him play that 6th position too, because I do think Kellen Acosta is between the Ewell and the Adams kind of spectrum, if you will. So if and I'd agree, Odasowie is absolutely the more defensive midfield type, but Caffey is definitely more on the legit, like kind of deeper lying midfielder. And you watch him, it's not like he plays in a big league. He plays for, Hobro in Denmark. So it's not like he's at a super top level, but he plays pretty well. They seem to really like him. He just got to move to Brøndby, a better club in the same league. Maybe he gets time.
They're always top 3?
They're always in Champions League or Europa League.
So he's doing something right.
Yeah. And not ever look, I think this is something that as US fans, we do tend to get ahead of ourselves, if you will. Now that we have Dest in La Liga, you have McKinney in Serie A, you have even Tim Weah at Ligue 1, you have multiple guys in Premier League, multiple guys in Bundesliga. You look at a guy and you say, we kind of do this with Tim Weah a little bit, but you look at guys in the Austrian Bundesliga or in the Denmark Super League and even a little bit Reggie Cannon in Portugal, and you go, they're not playing in a big league. It's like, well, yeah, they are. They're playing in a top flight European league. It's still pretty good.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of people that they seem to miss is sometimes certain players get an opportunity that another player didn't. Right? When Weston McKennie was at Schalke, before he went to Juventus, people were talking about, maybe he could go play for a lower table Premier League team. Maybe
Southampton.
That's what they were thinking, right? When there was rumors about Juventus, they were thinking, what? Yeah. He'll never play, right? But he got the opportunity and he took it.
Yeah.
So there are players that they might be playing in the lower European leagues, like you mentioned, but maybe they just haven't got the other opportunities that the other guys have, right? Doesn't mean they can't play. That's one of the things I can't stand when I see on Twitter when someone calls a player garbage. I'm like, dude, these guys are professional athletes. The worst.
I promise no one coming in. Yeah. No one coming into the national team is garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Jazzy Zardes gets so much hate. And I'm like, dude, this guy, if he came out and played on your adult team, he would sauce people to death. Like, come on, stop it.
Hey, he's over 30, right? I could use him on my over 30.
Exactly, right? Yeah, my over 30 team, we're all dropping like flies.
Oh, man.
Calves, groin pulls.
No, and that's the point, though. I think Christian Cappy, you look at it and go, it's just Denmark. Mm-hmm. It's still a pretty solid league. They are, like I said, he's getting a transfer up. Mm-hmm. I think it would be interesting to see because I know Berhalter loves that deep-lying distributor, and Cappy could be that. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if, you see that against Northern Ireland especially.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have a lot of choices. So.
No, he doesn't. Well, and that's the thing is you put a very inexperienced Odasowie at that 6. Do you put a very experienced Kellen Acosta, but maybe not quite the guy you're looking for because he hasn't played really that role under Berhalter?
Right.
Or do you try out Cappy, who also is inexperienced? So I think Acosta probably starts that first friendly against Jamaica.
I think so.
And we'll all complain and groan about it, and then it will be okay.
And then at the end of
the day, it'll be okay. Isn't that how it works? Like we all kind of moan about these things, and at the end of the day, you're like, "Well, okay, we beat Jamaica like 3-0." Okay, so speaking of goals, let's talk the forwards: Daryl DK, Nico Gioacchini, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, Josh Sargent, and Jordan Siebatcheu. Now, Jordan Ciabachu is the darling of USMNT Twitter right now. He usurped Matthew Hoppe as that title. He gets the call in because originally we thought Josh Sargent wasn't going to be able to come in and all this stuff. He does, or at least Sargent wasn't going to be able to play both games.
Sargent wasn't going to be able to travel. Giacchini was dropped, and then he was brought back, and Ciabachu came in. Yeah. But either way, hey, it's more forwards, right?
Well, and that's the thing is we don't have. Listen, I think Josh Sargent is your starting number 9 because of he is, in my opinion, the most class player at that position that we have. But that said, no one's been convinced by anyone by his play for the men's national team, and there are a lot of guys below him who have looked decent at club and have had some opportunities and looked decent at country. So I don't think the striker position is solidified right now. I think that for me it's Sargent, but that doesn't mean that, you mentioned Zardes, he's right there. But DK is scoring a lot and being very influential in games for Barnsley. You have Ciabachu, who's scoring in Europa League. Even Giacchini, who's had a little bit of dip in form, but plays a very plays that position very much like Berhalter likes him to play. And then, you just have a lot of options. It's not the worst thing to have.
Yeah, we're talking about Adams gone. Who do we put in there? There's no depth there. Striker was one of those positions, right? Not too long ago, we were all like, oh my God, there's no depth at striker.
Yeah, we're like, oh my God, we're going to have to run out a 50-year-old Josie Altidore with 2 broken ankles,
Absolutely. But left back was that way. There was no depth, right? Now the pipeline for left back is good. The striker,
right, George Bello, he's your starter.
I wrote down a depth chart for striker, and it was like 15 names long.
Yeah,
we have options now, which is fantastic. But I'm with you. I think Sargent, he gets the start. He's working so hard for Werder Bremen, which are so hard to watch.
Yeah, if you cannot judge Josh Sargent based on how good Werder Bremen perform, because it's not his fault.
What he has done, the numbers that he's put up, what is it, like 6 goals, 3 assists?
He's done fine.
What he's done, those numbers with Werder Bremen, it's like there should be an asterisk next to it, you know? Like, but my thing is, a lot of people, they look at stats and the box score. I watch the game. I watch the player. He does, and he exemplifies what Berhalter wants as a man.
Right.
His hold-up play is phenomenal. His passing as a 9. You look at Ferreira, what he's doing with the Olympic qualifiers. That's who Josh Sargent is. Yeah. And he's doing it in a much more difficult league. So for me, he's absolutely the number 1 striker for me. This game and just in the future, until someone either overtakes him or if he starts playing just absolute trash soccer. But right now, I think you reward that work. He's working his butt off.
Well, and I think for Josh Sargent, I think there are 2 things that kind of make people think a little bit less of him than we wanted to. Because I remember after that U17 World Cup in 2019, I was like, this kid is like going to score 1 million goals for the U.S. men's national team. I am stoked. And he came out and he wasn't scoring the way we thought he would. And I think that's 2 reasons. One, Werder Bremen, even at that point in time, were not great. They were not in a good position. So when they signed him, it wasn't signing a young kid and we'll develop him. It was like, we're signing a young kid and developing him on the fly. Go score goals, young man. Yeah. And that's hard, as not everyone can be Erling Haaland. You do need some time to develop and grow. And so when we saw that in Germany, he wasn't a fully complete player. He's grown so much since 2019. His movement inside the box is great. His movement off the ball is great. You mentioned his passing, which I think has improved so much because of how bad Bremen are, that he's had to work with other guys extra hard. And he's had some great moments, not just scoring, but distributing the ball. It's finally you see him growing into the player we wanted him to be.
Yeah, what's crazy, you talk about what he's had to do for Werder Bremen. If you look at his heat map, if you didn't put his name next to it, you'd look at that heat map and think he was a center midfielder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unreal. I'd say 60% of the time he is in his own team's third. It's unreal. He's a striker.
Yeah.
But
he's not getting a whole lot of chances, but he has converted.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think the world of him, and I really hope that Werder Bremen either start putting some talent around him or that he gets a move somewhere so that people can really see the kind of player he is. But that's why I'm excited about this camp and about these games, because he is finally going to start to have that quality around him. You know, if he gets this start with Jamaica, you're talking possibly Pulisic on his left, Girena on his right, Yunus Musa coming up. You know, he's got talent around him, and we're going to get to see him and what he can do with guys that are helping him carry the load versus him, you know, with all the weight on his own back.
Well, and that's very true of just being able to play with better players than he would, you know, for his club level is going to be a blessing for him because he'll have hopefully better talent around him. So if Sargent's starting your first game, he might start both. I'm not entirely sure how Berhalter will play that. Mm-hmm. But you've got 4 like true central forwards on this roster. You only have 2 wingers, but you have 4 center forwards on this roster. Who's the other 1 or 2 that you think will get significant minutes in this kind of window?
I think with what DK's been doing, I mean, just it seems like every time you open Twitter, he's scored a goal. It's like, I didn't even know they were playing. Oh, he's got a goal. You know, it's just
they like made up a game on a Tuesday night and he's somehow scored. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think with what he's been doing, you gotta give him some minutes to see what he can do. Granted, it all depends on how training goes. I mean, he's lighting it up for Barnsley, but if he comes into training and he's just stinking it up, then what are you going to do? But I think just the potential that he has, the athleticism is out of this world. You got to see what he can do.
I feel like he's the type of guy that you have to get into the system because you're going to need him in Concacaf World Cup qualifying because you're going to have some of those matches where it's a terrible field. I mean, think about this. We're going to go down to Honduras, San Pedro Sula. We know that it's hot. It's steamy. You've got a million people who aren't even inside the stadium yelling at you, setting off fireworks. You've got a field that has been chewed over by cows, somehow also regrown 4 feet, and still there are cow patties on it.
Yeah.
That's not a place where you can go play pretty football the way that Greg Berhalter wants to play. You know, you're going to try it, don't get me wrong, but like you're going to need Daryl DK, who is like, I am 6'4" and taller than all of you and will score this goal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really like, I want DK to be involved in that regard because he's going to be someone who you're going to need off the bench who can do that. Because we saw, I think it was his most recent goal where the last game actually, where he scored 2 goals, I think was his most recent game. And one was very much I'm going to just be a better athlete than you.
Yeah.
And the other was, I'm going to be a better poacher than you are a defender. And those are 2 great skill sets to have in a CONCACAF match.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing about watching DK right now is seeing him become more of a poacher instead of just, I'm going to manhandle you. I'm going to get my head on that ball before you do. I'm going to beat you for pace. You're starting to see him learn how to make those runs and timing those runs and getting on the end of that cross. And so I think he's starting to play and become a little bit more of a soccer player instead of just an athlete, right? Yeah. And it's not to take anything away from what he's done. You know, as an Atlanta fan, watching Orlando a lot.
I'm very happy that he's being loaned out to Barnsley and has played so well.
Yeah.
Very happy.
I haven't even thought about that selfishly, yeah. But, you know, you watch him with Orlando, he has skill. He's not just this big guy that can get on the end of the cross. He has skill, but I think skill on the ball and then off the ball movements are different, and I think that's where you're starting to see him become a little bit better in those near post runs, far post runs, fake one way, get on the outside shoulder of the defender to get to that ball first. I think that's where you're seeing him improve, and it's awesome because he's improving so quickly. I think he could be such a serviceable player in our pool for exactly what you just said. Going down and you're playing on clumpy fields where you make a pass and it zigzags 3 different ways before it gets to where it's going. Yeah. Those are the types of games where sometimes you have to lift the ball and get ahead on it. And he's the type of person that it's like he was made for that, So
I truly believe that Concacaf is the most difficult qualifying because of the disparity and just what you have to deal with.
Yeah.
You come to the USA and Mexico, you go to, yes, I get Azteca is high altitude, but like that is a beautiful world-class stadium, right? Yeah. And the Mexico Federation takes care, like they may not take care of the visiting team, but like they put on their best for football because that's what they can do. They can afford it.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to go to at least one, I think, Caribbean team, be it Curacao, be it Trinidad. Who knows what that's going to be? We're going to have to, and Jamaica, since they've already qualified, we're going to have to go to Jamaica. Like you don't have a guaranteed beautiful pitch like you do when you play in a South American qualifier or a European qualifier, where that you're going to have a high quality, a high standard of what you're playing on. So I don't know. I love the fact that we have a guy like DK in the field that we can bring in for something like that.
Completely agree.
I'm excited. I do think he'll play. I don't know if Siabachu or Gioacchini will play. I would like to maybe see Siabachu, but I don't know if it's worth taking minutes away from either Sargent or DK.
Yeah, I think I would like to see Sargent play the full 90.
Yeah.
Given fitness, right, obviously. Yeah. But the first game versus Jamaica, I'd like to see him play the full 90. I think he deserves it. Plus, I just want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see what he can do, give him every opportunity to shine. But the second match, you've got a lot of different options to start, and then again, like we said, there's six subs, so lots of guys there, gonna have some rotation for sure.
Now the wingers, like I said, we only have 2: Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna. Now you mentioned Brendan Aronson can probably play on the wing. That's very true. So maybe you have 3, but we haven't seen Christian Pulisic in a U.S. men's national team uniform since 2019.
Yeah.
And granted, 2020 is just whatever.
It's crazy.
The first friendly, it wasn't going to happen. Then he was hurt for the November friendlies, and then December he wasn't coming over here. So whatever. But I'm very excited to see him back in the fold, and to see Gio Reyna continue to hopefully evolve into the player we need him to be. But I don't think they're going full 90 both matches.
No, I don't want to. Especially with Pulisic's calf and hamstrings and everything,
body as a whole.
I don't want to push him that way. I am super excited to see him. Probably more excited to see him in a U.S. men's national team kit than any other player right now, just because, like you said, it's I think it's October of 2019.
Yeah,
wild to think about. So I want to see him. I could maybe see him go full 90 the first match, but even then, I think I'd rather see him go 60 minutes. Put in Aronson. Leggett could possibly play the inverted tucked in winger. Give him 45 minutes the second game. You've got a few options. Like you said, there's only 2 actual wingers, but there are a few players that they can get the job done.
Yeah.
Sargent has played.
That's the one I think he has played right wing, so he could possibly. Yeah.
Right. So
Musa, since apparently he's also a right-sided player, so who knows?
Yeah. And
seriously.
Speaking of Gioacchini and Siabachu, I've seen someone. I think they had Nico on the wing. I don't see that at all. Like, we just talked about there are certain guys where you can move them and they can play wing, but then there's other guys that I don't see it. But I don't think you're going to see Pulisic and Reyna play 90 minutes both games. So I think you have to go Leggett, Aronson, and Really, I'm looking at the midfielders right now. Possibly De La Torre.
Yeah, that's an interesting shout.
And then here's the thing. Yunus Musa, if you have to, he can play winger.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to have to get creative if you're Berhalter, because who wouldn't want to see Pulisic and Reyna play two matches, 90 minutes? I mean, that'd be amazing.
Well, and the two guys who were the most likely, especially when we're talking Europe, to have played that, Jordan Morris and Paul Areola, not available. So
right,
there. It's a weird roster.
Tim Weah.
Tim Weah's not there. Right,
God,
that's the other one where you can't go.
I wanted to see Tim Weah
I want Tim Weah to play goalkeeper, right back, center mid, striker, and I want him to play every position. I think Tim Weah is I'm so frustrated that we didn't get him. I understand it. I'm not mad at it. I'm mad at the circumstances, not mad, I get it. But 100%. Oh man, that would have been great, especially ahead of Nations League, to get him truly into the system, working as that inverted right winger who tucks in a little bit closer to your striker.
Mm-hmm.
Dest overlapping. Oh my God! Give it to me.
I know.
It sucks, but yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Your wingers that you wanted were unavailable. It could have been Areola, it could have been a Morris, it could have been a Weah. They're not available. Whatever. I think that's kind of the takeaway for this window as a whole. I think that there was so much promise when we heard, we're going to have a friendly in March. We're going to play Northern Ireland. Okay, whatever, cool. Mm-hmm. Jamaica. Oh yeah, this will be fun. And then it's not going to be as fun as we thought it was going to be.
Right. It's not going to be what we thought, but I think it's going to be good to see the boys together. The European, the Wonder Kids, call them whatever you want to call them. It's going to be so good to see them. And to what we were just talking about with the lack of wingers because of COVID and just circumstances that no one had any control over. Do you think, we might not see three at the back, but do you think we could see something different up front instead of three up front?
I do actually a little bit.
Could we see a hold up striker with a kind of a second striker playing off of him, just because of the lack of personnel?
So I think if you see that, I do think that's a possibility, because I think you could see a 4-3-3, but your right winger would be the one that tucks in a little bit more closer to that striker. So you could have a DK and Sargent, or DK and Gioacchini, who has a little bit of experience on the right wing, not a lot, but they could be the super tucked in winger, which then allows that fullback to be able to get up the line. That you can only do that if you're playing it, I think, with Dest, because I don't think Cannon is as effective going forward. You'd have to do that with Dest as your overlapping right back, because he's definitely more
adapted. Well, somebody's got to create the width there, right?
Right, exactly. And I don't think Cannon creates the width the way that that Dest does. Obviously, I mean, Sergio Dest is the best fullback in the pool for a reason.
Oh my God!
So I do. I think you could see that, and that would be interesting. I think it would be an interesting wrinkle that you could get a little bit used to, and if you're Berhalter, that's data that you can look at, because there may be some teams in Concacaf that you're having a wide 4-3-3 doesn't make sense against a team with 5 fullbacks or 5 defenders.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's not something that he wants to do. It's just based on the circumstances that have been presented. It's hey, here's the cards you're dealt. Well, I would really like to play a straight right now. Well, that's not the cards you have. So he might be forced into doing something like that, which would be interesting. And then also it's good for him to kind of stretch himself and show what kind of manager he is. Yeah,
I mean, that's true. And like we said about Jamaica, it's definitely a weak opponent. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to get guys in that you can truly – I mean, I think their forward line is actually pretty darn good. Yeah. They don't have a whole lot of experience at the national team level, but all of them are key contributors for they're not Premier League teams, but most of them are playing at the championship level, so they're pretty good. Yeah. Watford, Swansea, some other teams at that level.
They'll be ready for a fight. I guarantee that.
And I don't think that they're going to come out there and try to lay down, that's for sure. But they just don't have the talent that we would have expected. And then Northern Ireland on the flip side, I think, is going to be super good defensively. They have amazing. Well, I don't want to say amazing. No, I'll use that. They have amazing experience at their defensive line. They have a lot of guys who have played a lot of minutes for Northern Ireland, a lot of guys who have been playing in some sort of relatively high English league for a while. They're going to be a guy. That's where I think that's another reason why I think DK starts the second match, because you may not be able to be as pretty. Right. You may have to have a guy that you can lump a cross into and he'll get his head onto it. But I think Northern Ireland will be we could score 10 goals against Jamaica and score 0 against Northern Ireland, and it wouldn't say anything one way or the other to me.
They're going to be well organized. They're going to be scrappy. Yeah. They're going to be like these games. They're not going to be easy. Even like I said with Jamaica, they're not bringing their top team, but they're not going to go out without a fight.
Right.
Our boys are going to have to work.
Yeah,
they are. They're going to have to show what they're made of.
And that's what you want, because even though, look, Jamaica's 47 in the world, Northern Ireland's 45. Is that top? No, but it's you're not playing another team at that level in Concacaf outside of Mexico.
Right.
Let's stop pretending like we have to beat the number 5 team in the world to get out of Concacaf. You don't. You have to be 45 and below.
Yep.
That's how this works, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, the style of play 40 and above is very different from 40 and below. So getting matches against teams like this is going to be helpful. The Northern Ireland match, I think, will be a lot like that Wales match that we saw in November, where it's just going to be a little bit more tough to break them down. They will be very good getting the ball out of the air. They will play long. They're not going to, so it's not even going to be a chance for your counter press to take the ball off of them, because they don't do that. They kick it long.
Yeah.
So, it'll be an interesting game to deal with, because it will be so different than what you want to play with. But that doesn't mean it's not a good practice game. Like, that's the whole point of this.
Yeah. I think we'll learn a lot. Like you said, is it a top opponent like Switzerland when we play in May?
Right.
That's going to be a great test. This isn't that. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to be taken from it. Right.
It's still a better team than what we played against Trinidad and El Salvador. I think that's the point, right? And Absolutely. Even better than probably what we played against Panama in November. Both of these teams are. So they're still better teams.
Yep, 100%.
So, I guess to sum it all up, it's going to be hard to tell what we'll get out of this team, just because the roster is incomplete in terms of who will play where. Mm-hmm. You don't have depth at certain positions. You may not have guys who would normally play that position be playing in a position. And you're going to be playing teams that, with Jamaica, you just have a lot of guys who can't make it. And with Northern Ireland, this is the last thing on their mind. They've got a match, 2 matches for World Cup qualifying, bookending this match. They're more concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the one big question is, what do you want to see from the team just overall?
I want to see cohesion, everybody on the same page. When we watched the boys versus Wales a few months ago, you could tell there was tons of talent on the field, but it was a bit disjointed.
Yeah.
Mostly because there wasn't a ton of time to work together. And a lot of guys, it was the first time they were playing together, et cetera, et cetera. This time they've had a little bit more time together. They should be a little bit more fluid, less.
Also not thrown together.
Yeah, exactly.
That November one was thrown together. This is.
Yeah. I think when we see them play, I want to see it look a little bit more like well-oiled instead of herky-jerky, I guess is a weird word to say, but it's almost like you can see them thinking, oh, my 8 dropped in. I need to move here. I want to see it more natural. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
I love that, because that's kind of how I felt about the U.S. U23s against Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
We'll shift to that in a second, but I guess my big takeaway is just, to your point, I want to see cohesion. I want to see cohesion from back to front, and that depends on that 6 in the system. So my biggest question is, how does whoever is playing in that deep lying midfield role, how do they perform? Because we're going to have someone other than Tyler Adams be able to do that. So this is a fine time to figure that out.
Hey, it's a job to be had, right? There's got to be a backup six. And so somebody could stake their claim.
Yep.
If they play well, if they show well, they could say, hey, listen, TA's hurt right now, or he can't be released. Yep. Look at me.
Well, we've talked a lot about some matches that really don't mean a whole lot. Let's talk about a match that did mean a lot in the sense of, actually doing something. The US U23 beats Dominican Republic 4-0. And based on that win and then Costa Rica losing, they advanced to the semifinals of Concacaf men's Olympic qualifying. That semifinal is the most important match. You have to win that to qualify for the Olympics, which is the goal of this whole thing. 4-0. It wasn't a very pretty first half. The second half was much better. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts about the U.S. win over Dominican Republic in that game?
I think kind of like what we just said, that first half did look a bit like they were just thinking about every single move they were making instead of just playing soccer. Yeah. The second half, you could tell they were coming out playing just so much quicker. When guys are staying in a low block and you pass it and you make I say it all the time when I coach my kids, if you make the obvious pass, that's what they're looking at. They're already trying to react and trying to predict what you're going to do. So if you make the pass that they think you're going to make, they're there.
Right.
Which is why
it was so linear. It was so linear. That's why it was like it went from A to B to C to D and it's like, no, you can't just keep doing that.
It was slow. It was predictable. And that was the outcome, going into half thinking, oh my gosh, we're struggling versus Dominican Republic. Like, what's going on? But I think the second half, there were some changes made. We did what we needed to do. And once that first goal went in, the Dominican Republic, they weren't at the time. They weren't out of it, right?
No, they weren't. So they had a chance.
To advance, they were like, okay, well, we got to get one back, which means they have to open up a little bit more. And I think that's when you started to see, that I don't want to say onslaught. It was only 4, but you know what I mean? Like we kind of had our way at that point. Yeah.
And I think for me, most importantly, that there were changes made and the players reacted, adapted, and performed better. And, credit a little bit to Kreis for recognizing that. He had 2 very high and wide wingers in the first half, and he just brought them in a little bit. Said, hey, guys, we're not passing the ball very well. We're not connecting well. So come a little bit closer, get the ball. Also put in Sebastian Soto or Jesus Pereira, which I think helped. But it also the best way I can explain it to me is so Ferreira does love to come back into the midfield to get the ball. And I think that didn't help because when you had – the shape that Dominican Republic was playing, there wasn't space there for him to get that ball.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense. So putting Soto, a guy who likes to stay a little higher, it takes a little bit of that space away for those wingers to come in or your midfielders to push up.
And they weren't following him, right?
It was like have it.
When was playing and your 9 or your 8s, when they drop in and a center back follows them or a defensive midfielder follows them, it's the whole thing of creating space for a winger to cut it. They weren't following him. So you had 8s and you had Ferreira and you had Yule. They were just stacked on top of each other, playing passes right next to each other. It wasn't doing anything because you're not moving the defender at that moment. So it was pointless, which it was a head scratcher for me to see Ferreira starting because before the match, I had kind of thrown out lineups and said, we know what DR is going to do. So I think Soto will probably –
I thought Soto would have been a better choice.
Yeah, so that kind of – I'm not sure why that happened, but –
I think the plan was to still put out as much first-choice lineup as you could while rotating what you needed to get the – because this – if you knew basically if you won this game, you're on 6 points. It's basically –
Mexico is going to take care of their
you expect Mexico to beat Costa Rica or at least not lose. You knew that 6 points would get it for you. So I think that was a thought is like put your best forward out there and, things will happen. But to your point, yes, there was a change in shape from Dominican Republic, but we still knew that they were kind of defend low. And they weren't super aggressive coming out of that block. So Ferreira just was ineffective. Nothing against him. It's not like he played poorly.
Right.
I don't think it just was ineffective. It reminded me of, and you kind of touched on this, like when I referee and I see like 14, 15 teams and they're playing in either SCCL or like one of those higher leagues, and they're not really doing anything, but they're doing a lot. And what I mean is they're doing what they're told to do in the system, right? Their coaches said, when you do this, and then you do this. You make this pass, you receive it here. And we were doing that. Like, I don't think we were not playing the system.
Right.
But the system wasn't working. The setup, anyway, wasn't working against that. So you were doing all these things, but you weren't adapting. You weren't saying, oh, I've tried this 3 times and it hasn't worked.
Exactly.
So let me change it up. You're just doing what you were told. And I think they got a little bit more freedom in the second half. They were able to find some more space just by bringing players a little bit closer to them so that you didn't have to force yourself into that space. And it worked. We got 4 goals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for being able to change on the fly. And credit to Christ, like you said, at half he did that. But during the first half, there was no change. And with soccer, you might want to do a certain thing, but if the opponent's not having it, right? Like if they're just saying, hey, you know what, do what you want to do, we're going to sit back here. Yep. Guess what? It's not going to work. Look at Spain versus Russia. I think I want to say the Spain center backs passed it between each other like 900 times during the match because they just did the same thing and never changed it up. Yep. And with the DR just sitting back and the U.S. just kind of, it was like they were just wasting energy for nothing. It was fruitless. It was fruitless. So second half comes, change is made. Soto comes in, stretches that line. I think it made a big difference, and he worked hard. It's not like he just stood there on hey, go stand next to the center back and turn and run. That's not what he was doing. He dropped in sometimes, but it was very purposeful. And I'm glad to see that the change was made and it worked. I've seen a lot of people say, well, yeah, it was DR. You should have done it. It should have.
But we did it.
Exactly. And that's my thing. It happened. The first half, it was a struggle, but we buckled down. We made the changes that were necessary in a tournament that we need to win, and we got it done. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what needed to happen, and it happened.
Well, so, not great first half. Second half, though, you mentioned it. Even before that first goal, it was just like, man, why haven't we scored yet? Because it wasn't oh, man, why haven't we scored? It was like, how have we not scored? Because it just felt like we had a lot of chances. Jackson Ewell finally breaks it open in the 60th minute on a little flick on from Sebastian Saucedo cross. Then Hassani Dotson in the 73rd and 78th minute, and then Georgi Mihailovic in the 90th minute to seal it off 4-0. I do want to point out that I kind of was a little hard on Mihailovic in the last episode because he didn't have a very good game against Costa Rica. He looked pretty good at the left wing as kind of that inverted winger, which is a little bit more where he played for Chicago. So I'm thinking maybe that he might get a run out against Mexico in that spot. Yeah,
the Mexico game, it's a wild one, right? Because you don't really – you don't have to do anything at all. Like, you're already in the semis. Why risk injuring or gassing legs or anything like that? My thing is, like, if we can put some of the field trainers and the water boys and stuff, can we let's do it. Let's get everybody to the semifinals. Let's get everybody there healthy, ready to go. But yeah, I think he stepped his game up. He played well. I'm not a Georgie hater. I'm not a Georgie lover. I'm kind of indifferent. Like, I like him. He's fine. But he played well. But also, to be fair, he was coming in later in the game. Fresh legs versus gas legs makes a big difference. And I don't want to take credit from him. It sounds like I'm trying to take credit from him. I'm not. He's definitely earned more time, but I think more so with the Mexico game, I think it's just kind of a toss up. Who do you put out there? For me, it's more of who can we put out there that can just go play so we can rest the guys that need to be rested.
Yeah.
For the guys, right? I think you have to rest Glad.
Glad Ferreira had the yellow card, so.
Well, exactly. So it makes more sense to do that anyways, right? Keep them off because you're right. You don't want to risk them getting another one and missing the semis. That'd be terrible. Plus, they need the rest. So you do it. I think Kessler played well, but if you play Pineda against Mexico, if he plays well and gets those jitters out, because who thought that he was going to play that poorly against Costa Rica? I know I didn't.
I really was disappointed by his play.
It was, and I've been there, I guess. Nerves come in there, jitters, everything you heard, he's the better ball playing center back, and then he came out and did what he did. And it's like, what was that?
Yeah.
So I think if you put him out there, he's kind of the rotational center back that he needs to be in there anyways. And if he plays well, maybe you give him the run out in the semis.
Yeah.
But Kessler didn't do anything wrong. Was a little slow for pace in the DR game.
None of our center backs are that fast.
Exactly. Very rarely do you have not everybody can be Miles Robinson, right?
I mean, no.
I think you put Herrera on the left side and give Vines a rest. Vines is definitely going to start the semis. He's already played 2 full 90s. Probably put Araujo on the right, Herrera on the left, with Pineda and Kessler giving Glad rest and also keeping him from yellow card accumulation. So it's those types of things right there as far as what you're going to see for Mexico. It's not necessarily how does this help us for Mexico? It's how does this help us for the semifinals, right?
Yeah. And I think that's, as much as I love to beat Mexico and play Mexico, this is just, I don't think the Mexican team cares about it as much either. We both understand where we are. And honestly, the only way that we advance we get a better position in the group is we'd have to beat Mexico. And I got to be honest, I don't think that we can beat Mexico. I'm sorry. I just don't. They're really good.
I'm with you.
And it's not worth trying.
Season.
It's not worth trying to do that and sacrificing a possible shot in the semifinals. So I think you just do that. So again, we beat Dominican Republic 4-0. We lock in a spot in the semifinals. We have Mexico coming up on Wednesday, March 23rd. And that will be a late game, 9:30 start on FS1. We both think that it'll be a little bit more rotational. I almost feel like both teams will be like, you have it. No, you have it.
Yeah.
We'll get out of there. It'll be a draw or maybe a Mexico's got to win, and both teams are happy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. Again, you don't have to beat Mexico in this tournament, so you don't have to try.
It's almost I hate saying pointless because a game is a game, but let's be honest.
Yeah. Let's not do anything crazy. But I will tweet out a starting lineup tomorrow. I'm sure you will as well. But before we leave, remind us all where we can follow you and how we can keep up with what you're doing on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah. So it is USMNT Corner. That's my USA-based Twitter handle. It's where I go to it's soccer-centric. I wanted to have somewhere where I could go, and it's nothing but soccer. And then also Caleb Cook on Twitter, Instagram. I appreciate you having me on. It's been great. I could talk about soccer for.
I feel that way too.
People generally like, okay, my wife, if I'm talking to my friends about soccer, my wife's like, come on, we got to go. They don't want to hear you anymore.
Well, you know what? We can talk soccer anytime you like. I appreciate you being on here. And again, go follow him on Twitter at USMNT Corner. We'll chat later. And we've got a couple of matches coming up. You've got, like I said, USA U23s versus Mexico on Wednesday, March 23rd. You've got USA Jamaica in Austria on March 25th. That's a 1:00 start. And then USA Northern Ireland at noon on Fox. It's probably a 1:00 start, but it's Fox, so they start you an hour early. So 3 matches, possibly 4 if actually 4, for sure 4, with the semifinal on Sunday at either 6 or 9:30. So 4 matches for the U.S. men this week. Hopefully an extra one added next Tuesday. Again, thanks for joining me, Caleb. Let's hopefully get some good soccer to watch this upcoming week.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Soccer for Us. Thanks again to Caleb from USMNT Corner on Twitter for joining me to talk about the numerous matches we had ahead of us this week. Appreciate his insight and his perspective on what it's hard to evaluate these matches in singularity, but it's nice to see individual performances and kind of engage where the program is as a whole as we gear up for important matches at the senior level coming up in June, July, and then, World Cup qualifying starting in September. And I really like his take on the USA versus Mexico match in this final group match of, Concacaf Olympic qualifying. Look, it's important to always play your best against Mexico, but sometimes it's more important to realize that the prize of this is not beating Mexico. It's qualifying for the Olympics. So let's just make sure we do that. I think that's what we all want. We want to see us qualify for that Olympic tournament, and that means we have to win the semifinal on Sunday. Again, make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcatcher you're listening right now. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. Tweet at us there with your thoughts, takes, opinions, whatever it is. Tweet us there. I'd be happy to share them on the show here. So again, thank you for listening. Let's go enjoy these matches that we have coming up. I'm Bart. I'm out.